In this session, I'm joined by artistic extraordinaire Alex Stalling from Tinker. And what's really cool about this session is that we get to talk about where does art, science, and tech meet and what happens when they meet. Now, I know there's a lot of misconceptions about, for example, careers in art and careers in engineering. And actually, a lot of people in society use that as quite a stark juxtaposition, saying that they're completely opposite people. But Alex and I get to talk about that actually between these two types of people, there is a lot of commonality when you get to solving or creating artwork. I mean, whether you're drawing, sketching, or sculpturing something, you need a lot of creativity to imagine what that might look like before you do it. Same as being an engineer. I can tell you right now, designing a system to solve any problem is not a clear-cut thing like that's the answer or there's one right answer. You have to think about all the possible options and be creative which ones you select, or maybe select parts of each one. And so there's a lot of creative thinking in both of these types of people. And so Alex and I get to talk about that in this session. A little bit about Alex and Tinker. So Alex is the founder of Tinker, which is a Toowoomba-based but also online-based company that does a lot of things to do with teaching art, selling art products, as well as managing events. Alex has had a lot of experience, I think about a decade of creative experience of her own, as well as managing other things. So I'm really excited to get her on here and have her featured for this session, and I'm sure you'll learn a lot about where art, science, and tech meet. Can I just start off? Can I get you to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you're doing, and how maybe tech kind of inspires that, and maybe how art and tech go together a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm Alex. I am an artist, and with that, I very much work across a whole multidisciplinary practice. So I teach workshops, I have art exhibitions, and then I also sell art-based products. And for me, that last one, the art-based products, is where I really was able to marry up using technology and creative processes to create, a product range using my designs.
Cool. And I suppose by doing so, I suppose you've got a bit of an edge because you're thinking outside the box, or?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate in the fact that I actually have access to the technology side of it. It's not my personal strength. I understand the drawing element and what I need in order to draw something that can be translated to something that can be done with tech. But my husband's actually very techie, and so he does all the 3D printing, all the laser cutting, and we get to work together. And
Cool.
yeah, it's through that I was able to then look at like the way that he was applying the 3D printing and the tech stuff with other ways that could be more creative about it.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Yeah, well, that's a really cool way to look at how you can merge them together. So,
Yeah.
oh, nice. Okay, the next question I had was probably, well, actually, when did you pick up this passion for art, and what was the first thing you did, I suppose, in art?
I've always been creative, particularly with drawing and painting, ever since I was a small child. And I very much went with the narrative for a long time that this was a hobby and not something I could develop into a full-time career. And it really wasn't until end of high school when I had a really great high school teacher who came to me with an application for going to university to study visual arts. And she was like, you need to pursue this. You're someone who needs to work in the arts. And I guess that was that moment where I realized that this was something that I was naturally wanting to do, that I could then turn into a career, and it kind of has just been evolving over the years.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, that's awesome. So I suppose it kind of just evolved as you got into it. And I suppose that's kind of where I always think it comes together, is when you're passionate about something, you let it grow, and it does grow because it's not about effort putting into it. So yeah, that's really cool. I wish I had the artistic talent you have, but hopefully I've got other talent somewhere else. So
Well, there's always collaboration. And like I said, the technology and the art stuff that I do is very much a collaboration between me and my partner, because he uses that side of his brain and I use this side of our brain. And it's really beautiful to sort of watch them come together. So
yeah. Oh, wow. No, that's awesome. Okay. I suppose the next question is on the lines of what tech do you use in art you do, and how does it help you, or why does it how does it augment the art that you do and make it better?
Yeah, so I use two different types. I either use laser cutting or 3D printing. We also have access to a 3D resin printer, but that's still something that I'm yet to dip my toes into, but it's sitting there and I'm thinking about it. But with that, the 3D printing, what I really like about it is it's an addition of something. You're building something from scratch. And so for me, I'm actually usually using that with creating kind of extruded images that I can then use as block stamps or other things like that. Whereas the laser cut, I look at that as a way of adding my design to something else, because it's that subtraction method where you have a surface and you start carving out of it.
Yeah. Wow. And what type of materials have you carved from?
So with the laser cut, I use acrylic, all different colors. I am really enjoying the clear acrylic, and I'm filling it in with a paint pen at the moment because I'm just actually enjoying the aesthetic of that kind of line drawing that's hovering.
Yeah.
But I also use bamboo, salvage wood. I go to timber yards and pick up the scrap kind of veneer woods and stuff from those people, because I like the grains and that come with it. But yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment. Yeah.
Oh wow. No, that's awesome. Do you have any there to show anyone, or?
Yeah, so I have one loner earring, but this one's actually been painted already. Get in the light. Okay. So the koala has been laser cut, and then I've gone back in and hand painted it, and this is like the wood grain in that.
Wow.
So I like to keep the wood grain exposed in parts of the image because I think that that's really interesting. And like I said, depending on the image, some will have more exposed wood grain than others, but that's why I like to find salvage timber and stuff, because you're getting those really true one-off kind of looks, and it's playing with like the mass-produced technology, but also making it really beautiful and individual.
Wow. No, that's really cool. There's a lot of thought in that, which is actually awesome to see.
Yeah, I think that's one thing when I do talk to my techie buddies, being on the creative side, I really look at materials for their aesthetic function and all the little bits and pieces that they add, whereas sometimes people think of it in completely in a functional function. So I think that's an interesting point of difference.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. The next question I had for you, what are some of the coolest projects you've done? And it could be art and maybe it had tech in it, or maybe it's just some artwork like we'd love to see. So yeah.
Well, straight off, when the thing that I did that was really cool was with my children years ago, and we took a bunch of their drawings, extruded them, turned them into stamps, and we made it for Christmas gifts, and we got them to stamp out onto fabric, and they made their own fabric, and then we made them into like shopping bags and products for people. And it's been something that's been like ticking over in my mind that I really want to get back into and develop a little bit further. And yeah, I think that was one of the coolest kind of, marrying the ideas of like art and technology together. And it was a kind of a modern take on like potato stamping, but because you're using 3D printing and because you can actually get really into the details and have some really intricate lines in that, there was a whole new level to it, and it was really beautiful.
Yeah. Wow. So and there's just an idea of like, how big were these printed stamps?
So we made them, this was on our old printer, so we only made them really, really tiny because that's what we had. But you could make them as big or as small as you want your printing bed to be. I mean, you could even break it down even further and do it as like a multiple color print. So you reduce your image into like the separate color blocks, and then you print the individual blocks, and then you print them on top of each other, much like you would with like a lino block or something like that.
Yeah. That's so cool. I love how you, like you mentioned, I remember doing lino when I was really, really young, and you paint it and you carve it and you put it there. And it's actually kind of cool to see that you can draw like, synergies to the same thing, but just different ways to do it. So
yes, and it definitely has a different look and feel to it. So like when you're doing block printing with like rubber, wood, and the vinyl, it creates a different surface texture on it. And it's the same again when you're using the 3D printing. The way that the actual pressure applies to the surface, you will get a different effect with it as well. So it's not even a replacement of those kinds of technologies. It's an addition to that, you know, kind of thinking and doing it in a different way.
Wow. Yeah. That's so cool. I've never thought of it like that, but you're 100% right.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. So the next question I had for you, and obviously in terms of like an artist's perspective, where do you think 3D printing will allow, like what will you think 3D printing will advance to allow artists to do? Like, I mean, one example might be as we get bigger printers, our artwork might just be scaled a lot bigger, but is there any other ones you've...
I mean, it's kind of untapped at the moment, and artists are just starting to jump into it. And it's like any kind of technology. It was like when the camera was brought into it, it was the same with like computer art and then film. It's now that 3D printing and all these other technologies are becoming a little bit more accessible and a little bit more plug and play to a certain degree. More creatives are going to jump on, and honestly, the possibilities are endless. Like, you've seen people already using like the 3D printed pens, and they're drawing in it and doing those line drawings like you would with, you know, traditionally with wire or string. They've already got printers that are extruding in ceramic and clay. So you've now got potters that are moving into that kind of function as well. I mean, it is honestly, it's just really limitless. And I'm excited to see where it goes, because the way that I think of things is not going to be the same as another artist thinks of things. And it's just, yeah, I'm excited. Like, I couldn't really tell you exactly where it's going, but it definitely, you can just see artists are picking up on it now and starting to run with it, and it's just going to explode into something cool.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, I always think of tech as tools, like to do things. And, you know, as an engineering brain, that's kind of it's more, all right, that's the function, it has to do this. But I think, talking to you, it's really apparent that it seems like this tech is just a means or a tool to express yourself in different ways using different stuff. So that's cool to hear that.
Yeah, and like I said, I have these conversations a lot with like my, you know, creative friends versus my like techie engineering friends, and it's bringing both those together. You get some really interesting things in the middle, but it's that whole, one is aesthetic and one is function, and what happens is kind of cool.
Yeah. What a great mix. All right, so I suppose, and we touched on it a little bit, but could you just expand on, I'm just going to compare, like, let's say yourself and another artist who doesn't know about 3D printing or you know, laser cutting or anything else that you do. How does that allow you to, I suppose, grow as an entrepreneur?
So for me, having the ability to marry like my tech and art side, it's really good for my business side of things at the moment, and I am still working out ways to marry it into my creative practice where I exhibit. But right now, like on like the earring market, because that's where my major product line is, no one else really, you know, in this whole region that I'm working in is turning their designs, their drawings into the products that I'm doing. A lot of people are using templates and, you know, like free kind of templates and stuff, and they're compositing stuff together. So for me, having the ability to actually create my own original drawings and then understanding how it works with the technology, and also not being afraid of the technology and kind of playing with the different concepts and materials, and you know, the opportunity to bring together, like, you're not just having to use the 3D printing, you don't just have to use the laser cut exclusively. These are things you can come together. I think at the moment I feel like I am playing in a bit of a fun space right now, and that's just how I feel about it. But yeah,
it's so cool. It's you've got so many options to do what you want. I suppose it makes what you're thinking easier to make a reality from.
And it's that instant kind of thing, you know. There's no longer, I don't have to worry so long about the manufacturing process. It's not so much of having to, you know, break it down where I'm going to draw something and then I have to hand it over to someone who can do the CAD process, and then hand it over to someone who can do a test manufacturing run, and then so on and so forth before you get your actual product. Because I'm already collaborating with people with those skills, because I have a few of those skills myself. It takes something that could have taken months down to, you know, days or hours, depending on what it is.
Yeah. Oh, that's so exciting. I love hearing your perspective from that way. Because I mean, I have the same mindset on it, but just for different purposes. So it's cool that it does work in art too. So cool. All right. The next question I had is for kids who'd like to learn about this type of stuff, whether it's through using it for art or whatever, like what would you suggest they do? How would they learn it and things like that?
The first thing I would suggest to any kid is they need to learn the software. Because in order to work the hardware, you need to be able to create and design and understand all those kinds of things. The other thing that I would suggest to them is to find out local hubs or things like this, and rather than trying to reinvent the wheel themselves, actually connecting with groups that are offering this kind of resource and teaching, and learn those things. Where sometimes people can get really confused with this kind of stuff, particularly when I tell people I do 3D printing, they ask me, is that like paper printing? And then I explain to them that, no, I actually have to like build the design, and then there's a whole process to it. And because it's not quite plug and play yet, for kids, they, just having access to, people who understand who do it and want to share their knowledge. And even if you can get into a space that has the technology that you can get in and play with it firsthand, rather than having to like try and save up or buy something yourself. I would very much say kids start off by learning the software and hooking in with people who already have that existing kind of network to help you out.
Yeah, definitely. And I think actually out of all the interviews I've done recently, a lot of people just say it's mostly just to learn how to do something, you just do it and then figure it out from there. And I think you're 100% right. The software is the key, and then after that, there's a few settings you might have to change in the parameters of the printer, but that's just, you do that as you go. So
exactly.
And what programs do you use to 3D design?
So we're using a CAD program at the moment. I don't jump into the CAD side. I purely do all the drawings with Photoshop or Illustrator, and I separate all the layers down, and then we move that across into the programs and we go from there.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome. And I suppose the last question I got for you, so for kids who are watching this and they want to actually maybe see what you create and maybe how you create, because I know you've got a really awesome social presence. You put a lot of stuff online. Could you just let everyone know where they could find you and follow you?
So I have 2 spaces. The first one is Tinker, and it's my creative studio, and that's where I teach workshops for adults and children who would like to learn how to draw and create and get in touch with their creative side. And that is on Instagram and Facebook through Create@Tinker. And then the second one is my actual artist page, and that's where you'll get to see my earrings and my paintings and the things that I'm working on personally. And that is with Alex Stalling Art on social media.
A huge thank you to you, Alex. It was a pleasure actually talking about the synergies of art, science, and tech through creative thinking. For anyone out there who wants to follow Alex or potentially buy some products from her, please use these links provided. She has 2 Facebook pages and 2 websites for both Tinker and Alex Stalling. So get in contact with her. Now, the next session we have with her is going to be a really cool one, because we're going to use her artistic talent with our technology skills to create a 3D printed masterpiece from her artistic work. So stay tuned and check in, and it should be a lot of fun.